Hi, we're Rob and
Melissa.
Melissa.
We're from Seattle, Washington.
And you're listening to the Yoga Can podcast.
Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya.
That was the beautiful sound of Rob and Melissa Lunsgaard. They are two Kirtan leaders from the Seattle area who will be on the podcast next week. The song you just heard is from their new album, Breathe, which can be found wherever you get your music. Please go check out their new album and visit their website or follow them on social media, Rob and Melissa, to see where they will be holding space for Kirtan next.
That brings up this family that I've worked with for probably 10 or 11 years. It's a boy, he's now 18 with pretty significant autism. He's nonverbal.
Hey, I'm Lauren Sanders, and this is another episode of the Yoga Can podcast. A little while ago, I sat down with two yoga accessibility teachers, Mary and Brenda, to talk about accessibility yoga.
And when he was young, he would leave a session and his mom would always say, the best thing, I feel like the greatest gift is the gift of calm. You have given our family the gift of calm, even though Joel, and I know this family will not mind me using his name, that a lot of times Joel at home, there'd be high anxiety and high stress, and just for the whole family to have those tools that we're working on in yoga, because mom is always present during the sessions. Well, now Joel is 18 and he uses he uses a little reader board to communicate with me during sessions. And now he's asking me, because he's still not talking, but he types out very quickly, today I want you to help me be calm. What are tools that you can teach me? So he likes to chant, even though he doesn't chant. He puts his hand sometimes on my throat to feel the sound coming out of my voice. But it's really interesting because now he's an adult and he knows the things that have been so helpful to him. So he'll actually come into a session and ask, today, can you help me with this? So it's just amazing what we can receive from yoga.
And the self-advocacy then that he's developed to be able to know what to ask for and to feel confident and comfortable asking for that.
Yes.
Yeah. For someone that doesn't have a voice, he has gotten tools and a voice of his own to reach out to you and feel like, what are some things to be calm today? That's really neat. Yeah. That was Mary Fuhr and Brenda Baki.
All right. Okay. Well, this is Brenda here. So my name is Brenda Baki.
I'm Mary Gangler-Fuhr, and I'm an occupational therapist. And our Brenda and I, our roads actually met very early on in our careers. We both worked at Children's Therapy Center of Kent.
Brenda is a physical and yoga therapist.
And then I went on to work for a school district. We needed a PT, and so we contacted Brenda so that she could join our team. And we started working together. And then I had also taken one of my first yoga classes from Brenda in, I think it was 2001, after she had taken her training from Sonia Sumar. And she was offering a training on yoga for children. And since I was working in pediatrics, it seemed like that would be a great class for me to take. And it was. And so actually, we've been working together pretty much on and off for well over 20 years, really. Wow. Yeah. So we go way back.
Two lifelong friends, yogis, and safe to say lifelong advocates of supporting humans to reconnect back to their own bodies. Mary and Brenda are our guests for this week's episode, where they talk about what accessibility yoga is and how we can incorporate accessibility yoga into our own practice on and off the mat.
And I think also, we are as for our own personal practice, we're all aging. We're all going to have an injury or an illness at some time. Our practices are going to look different now than they did 10 years ago, and more different than what they will look like in 10 years from now. And so learning how to change that so we continue our practice as we age is really important. And not to think of it as a lesser practice because I'm not as flexible now as I was when I was 20, or I don't do a headstand now that I used to do when I was 20. But my practice is as strong, if not probably stronger now, because of thinking of the mindfulness and the peace of mind.
I knew you were going to say that.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. I first met Mary and Brenda earlier this year at Yoga Joy North in Spokane, Washington, where they led a weekend-long accessibility yoga training. We hear this word a lot, accessibility yoga, or you'll hear yoga is for everybody, or you'll begin to hear people pushing back a little bit more when someone says, oh, I'm not flexible enough, or I'm too big, yoga isn't for me, I'm not athletic. Well, Miranda Jimerson, she was on the podcast in episode 5, Yoga Love, and she talked about plus-size bodies in yoga and how yoga got her to fall back in love with her beautiful self. The name of this podcast, Yoga Can, means everybody can do yoga. So what is accessibility yoga?
So I think, one thing we can offer is the definition. And
Okay.
really that's that accessible yoga is really an approach to teaching. Mm-hmm. And it's based on the ideals of inclusivity, diversity, and accessibility. So rather than any specific style of yoga, and it's defined by the concepts that everyone has a right to the teachings and practice of yoga, and each individual is really unique, and just is an equal expression of our connectedness. And service and compassion are both really important in yoga as well as in accessible yoga, and that it should be collaborative and a creative process.
Jivana Heyman is the founder of Accessibility Yoga.
He came to his accessible yoga teachings, probably 20 years ago.
And I believe that his grandma practiced yoga and he had practiced with her, from what I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. And, he started to bring his teachings during the AIDS crises in the 80s, when many of his close friends were sick or dying, and started sharing and really wanting to bring yoga more to the forefront with a lot of what was going on with many people that were very close to him.
Wow.
So I think that he talks about that as being kind of the beginning of kind of his accessible yoga teachings, and then it really just expanded from there.
This grassroots nonprofit organization has grown into an international advocacy and education organization dedicated to share the benefits of yoga with everybody and every walk of life. What really just sets me on fire about accessibility yoga is that it shifts the landscape of what yoga looks like and who it's for.
Accessible yoga is really just being able to share the benefits of yoga with anyone who currently doesn't have access to these practices. So being inclusive, being accessible for all, regardless of anyone's ability or background, or just where they're at any given time. That we really want everyone to know that yoga's there for them if that's something that they are choosing.
And we really want everyone to feel welcome to yoga practice and be able to participate. So sometimes people will say, oh, I'm just not flexible enough to do yoga. I'm too old to do yoga. I'm not healthy enough. But really, yoga is for everyone. And if we just look at the essence of poses, we can really see how we can make, choose variations to get each particular, key concept or movement. But really, it's about peace of mind, and everyone could benefit from being able to achieve a more peaceful mind.
Could you kind of go into the variation of postures? Because we'll start there, because that's kind of a place where I think a lot of people see yoga is in the poses.
Mhm.
So how does that look in accessibility yoga?
Okay. So I think maybe I'll just pick a common pose and we can talk
Okay.
about that, and then we can go from there. But
Yeah.
if we're thinking, say, tree pose, and just what all the benefits are of tree pose, improving balance, improving strength in our core, in our legs and hips, hip opening on the non-weight bearing leg, just that sense of grounding, concentration, focus, all of those things. I mean, there's so many benefits just in that pose. If you go moving up into the upper body, depending on where you're placing your hands and arms, if you're looking at chest opening with arms up above your head, hands at your heart center. So if you're thinking of the pose and all of those benefits, that really that can be accessible for anyone. You can work on tree pose standing against the wall and having the stability of the grounding or the surface of both the floor and the wall behind you to offer some balance if you're in a standing pose. You can also do that same pose on the floor. You could do it on your back or on your stomach. And again, picking one of those benefits, if it's thinking of the grounding focus piece of tree pose, having your foot against the wall to still feel the earth under you, even if you're on the ground. So for a lot of our students, as we were talking about with, say, physical disabilities, maybe cerebral palsy, maybe another neurological deficit, sometimes standing might not be accessible, but sitting in a chair or lying on the ground is. So I think it's, really having that ability to both dissect the pose and look at all of the pieces that are amazing in any of our yoga poses, and go from there. So, maybe it's something physical, maybe it's the emotional regulation, the feeling of a sense of grounding and balance in the mind and not working on one leg balance. So I think, that's a big, it's a big piece of the training, and we really try to dissect poses and help yoga teachers think, and people in their own practices think of ways that they can receive benefit from any pose in many different ways, whether it's chair yoga or being on the ground or standing with a balanced ballet bar in front of you for support. So there's just a lot of, as we know, a lot of different props that we use to support our yoga practice. And with making yoga accessible, we choose to use even more props, or having more props available.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the really exciting parts of the training, was just how many people were able to use blankets or bolsters or blocks or the wall or chair in so many different really creative ways. And that's the exciting part. Like, how can we really take the benefits of that pose and just modify it, make a variation on that?
And and by doing that, you're making it safe and appropriate for anyone
and comfortable.
So then,
right.
Yeah.
And what I wish is that I could actually be in all of your trainings, because everyone did something different. It was like always no two poses with props were ever the same. Because for the listeners out there, in our training, Mary and Brenda would invite us to host a class of our own within our training, and we would have to do a few poses, and everyone would do tree pose differently. And using props, using a chair, using the wall. I mean, it was just really like we were all walking around taking pictures because there were just so many unique ideas about how to get people into these poses. I mean, it was honestly like kind of endless.
Mhm.
And on top of that, what I think is super neat about it is that it has helped me be a better yoga teacher because I teach a vinyasa flow class, and what it's made me a lot more comfortable to welcome all body types,
Yes.
all people within my classes. And that's been something that I've been carrying since your training is a sense of confidence that I do have this ability to hold space for people, whatever physically or mentally that they're bringing into the classroom. I might not understand what they're going through, but I feel a lot more comfortable holding space for them. I feel a lot more comfortable walking up and giving somebody a prop or
Mhm.
bringing a chair to somebody where before our training, I wouldn't have thought to have done that because I didn't want to, make that person uncomfortable. But now I see it as, just a gateway to bring somebody into the pose that's a safe way for them to receive the benefits that they need from that posture. So thank you
I'm
for
so,
giving me that.
yeah, I'm so glad that you just
Mhm.
gave those examples and brought up because I think even you mentioning that you teach vinyasa flow style classes, I think a lot of times students that have more fitness, that are maybe feel that they're not fit or that they have an injury, they have seen what I'm just going to say power vinyasa class because that just pops to mind, and they have this vision of that's what that class is, and there's absolutely no way I could do that. And I think for you to just give what you just said was beautiful, and to just help people understand that just connecting breath and movement is vinyasa and vinyasa flow. So I think when we're doing, say, sun salutations and doing them in a chair or in bed or standing with a chair in front or at the wall. I mean, there's, again, you can do vinyasa connecting breath and movement in any way that it doesn't mean you're doing a traditional 12-step sun salutation. Helping kids and students connect with their breath in a way, the breathing and the movement, whether it's muscle tightness or muscle weakness. If someone is breathing and really doing conscious breathing, that it was helping them to just feel their bodies, to let more of the anxiety and the fearfulness with the movement, letting some of that go because they were able to make more connections. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, because with the breath, because through breathing and conscious breathing, it creates this kind of landscape for you to kind of sit in space in a way and slow down and, you know, just kind of sit there and feel your body and
Right.
explore it. So, yeah, that's
Just
yeah.
then we're more, of course, we know we feel more grounded and
Mhm.
just a sense of balance in our mind and body. And
Yeah.
so if you have a neurological deficit or anything going on, that if you can connect with your breath, it just helps in so many ways. I mean, I've had one girl that could stop the clonus, the spasticity with her foot and her knee shaking. She could manage that or stop that with her breathing. So for her it was huge. She was at an age where getting close to teenage, so both it felt unusual when her body would do that, but also she was kind of embarrassed if her leg was shaking. So that, again, that's just another example of how some of the tools of yoga were very beneficial, are very beneficial to anyone.
On that note, let's take a little break.
Hey everyone, I'm Haley.
And I'm Megan, and we're the voices behind Sage Sisters Podcast.
Sage what? Based here in the Pacific Northwest, we are two former sorority bitches who have turned into wellness witches. We've been friends since our college days of theme parties, which then transitioned to bar hopping and happy hours in Seattle. But now we're on the search for what wellness and self-care actually mean.
Every Friday, we release new episodes chronicling our exploration of alternative energy healing modalities, spiritual wellness, and intuitive development. You can find us by searching Sage Sisters wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can download and subscribe to our episodes on iTunes and Spotify.
We both have found incredible healing through multiple forms of energy work and wanted to spread the love to all of you. So please look us up and join us to start your own spiritual wellness exploration.
Also, remember to download, subscribe, and throw us a rating and review on iTunes so we can make sure to keep bringing you the content you want to hear. And don't forget,
Go sage yourself.
The Sage Sister podcast is super fun and really informative. Go show those ladies some love and check out their podcast. Now let's get back into this episode with Mary and Brenda. So in our training, one of you mentioned that you want to start with the side that feels the best.
Yes. Well, I think what it usually refers to someone who's either had a stroke or has cerebral palsy and has a hemiplegia.
Okay.
And so one side might be tighter or might be experiencing sensation differently than the other. So if you can start with the side that maybe seems like it has more typical functioning or was what you were used to prior to an injury, that will help. It's almost like how you might mentally visualize moving through a pattern before you actually do it, that it helps prepare the other side for the movement and the sensation that will be incoming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's variations with that, of course, because every individual, we're all different. Like what Mary was saying, and then if you move on to the side that might be slightly weaker or have a deficit, something happening on that side, that you can go two ways with it. Sometimes it's helpful to repeat the movement then 2 times on that side, or hold something longer, or it might be that side is very weak and that you're only just introducing the movement for a very short amount of time. So it's really, really dependent on the individual and kind of where they're at.
Okay.
And it can also be that the side that has the weakness or the spasticity can be assisted by the side that's not been affected by the stroke or cerebral palsy. Mm-hmm. So that both sides would be working together with one side assisting the other.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to mention one thing, just in case we don't come back to this, which kind of goes, Mary mentioned the visualization piece, which I just think is so important to be able. We've both taken a class from Mary Jo Federley, who is a yoga therapist up in Vancouver, BC. She's a yoga therapist, yoga teacher, and also a C5, C6 quadriplegic, was in a downhill ski accident. And she talked about in her training that for the first many months, probably at least 6 months when she was in acute care in the hospital, that because she was already a yoga teacher and a yoga therapist when her injury happened. Okay. So she visualized her practice, and I think at that point it was a vinyasa flow practice, but she daily, or maybe more than once a day, visualized her practice, would go through her entire practice, including, of course, her breathing and her pranayama practice. And then she said she would move on to using her eyes and her tongue through the practice, because she could get all of the movements of the spine by using her eyes and her tongue. So extension, flexion, lateral bending, and rotation. And just through those very subtle movements in her in her head, that she was really able to start kind of recruiting and having that sense again of mind-body connection.
Right.
So it was so huge, just to hear her talk about that, since she had lived that experience and was able to really share with us how important it is to really help our students and ourselves make those connections.
And we know that high-level athletes do the same thing. They may visualize themselves, going through the whole downhill race course on skis as a preparation to get the brain and body ready before actually experiencing it.
I've been reflecting a lot on, I'm so glad that you brought up Mary Jo Federle, because I have been really reflecting on her a lot lately. And because in a way it's meditation, even that movement and sitting, I see what she was doing as a form of meditation as well, which also helps to increase that brain function and can then begin to really facilitate that focus. And she probably actually began to through the visualization, she probably began to actually feel herself doing the sequence, even if she wasn't physically doing it. She was mentally, emotionally experiencing it.
Well, and the energy levels, she talked a lot about that, and just going through the layers and really being able to, even though she did not have feeling in her legs, but just having that sense of energy and really what that is. I think just that in itself is so powerful.
She also focused a lot on her breath work as well, and uses her breath work really powerfully to help promote some of her movements from getting from one position to another. And there was sound. She used sound with her breath as well.
Right. The chanting, sound work, and she's just an amazing woman. And I feel like anyone that would have the opportunity, to take her course.
Yeah,
it's really
amazing.
Great.
Being an accessibility yoga ambassador is a twofold responsibility. It is to be prepared to hold space for whoever walks into the classroom, right? But even bigger than that, it is a mission. It's a mission to bring yoga out into our communities.
Through our accessible yoga trainings, they're twofold. We want yoga teachers, to leave with the skills to feel confident as a yoga teacher and to feel like they can welcome all people into their classes and provide, like we've been talking about, provide modifications and variations and community and all of those things that we hope to get out of yoga. And then I think separate from that is that we also want yoga to be available to special populations. So maybe it's cancer or cardiac patients in a hospital setting, or the yoga for Parkinson's that I teach is at a senior center. So I also think it's really important for yoga to go out in the community to different populations, because not a lot of people are going to walk into a yoga studio, even if that teacher is doing everything possible to make it feel welcoming and inclusive. Accessibility, getting out in a van might not be, or getting out walking might not be possible for some people. So
I think for me, occupational therapy looks at the whole person, the combination of physical and spiritual, mental, and that is the same focus as accessible yoga. So it really helped me be able to expand creativity and ways that I could work with my clients. I don't think that before accessible yoga, I would have thought about doing movement or yoga poses at the wall or on the floor or in bed, in a bed as much. But it also helped me look at what other ways is yoga inaccessible to some people. It might be from a financial perspective. And so to think of that both in terms of how can we make both therapy as well as yoga available to people who might otherwise not be able to afford it or live in a location where there might not be a studio that they can go to. So just
How,
kind of broad.
yeah. How do you how do you two do that? Brenda, you were saying that you teach a group of seniors with Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are some other ways that we can sort of get out into the community and
Well,
serve?
I feel like because accessible yoga is becoming more popular, more just the words like Yoga Journal has an article and a video by Jivana Heyman, the founder of Accessible Yoga. I do feel like he has done so much for the organization and promoting accessible yoga in many different ways. But as far as your question about how can we do it right here in our hometown, I think that a lot of it's promotion, going out to the YMCAs and the senior centers and the hospitals, and really sharing, if people are not familiar with yoga and different benefits of yoga, that's a really good place to start. Just a little bit of in-servicing and PR work. And then I think from there, there's always grants available. Like the Parkinson's class is partially funded through the Northwest Parkinson's Foundation. So I think with each disability or health issue, that sometimes the organization, the MS Foundation, and I think the different groups that support health issues sometimes have funding and grants available. So that's a really good place to start. Within the school district, there are a number of funding opportunities, and we always think school districts don't have a lot of money, which is true, but within the school district, sometimes there's the PTA, student PTA groups at schools that will support yoga, after school yoga classes for kids, or support trainings for teachers. So I think it's great because there are, it seems, many more community organizations that are becoming aware of the benefits of yoga and are willing to help support that.
Yeah, they're starting to become bridges between the yoga world and the healthcare world.
But also by offering yoga in schools, it really provides the opportunity for children of all, all socioeconomic statuses to be present, kids of all different sizes, shapes, disability. Everyone has access if it's available in a school.
November 16th through the 17th, Mary and Brenda are returning back to Yoga Joy North to lead a yoga and mindfulness for old children training. It is open to yoga teachers, occupational therapists, physical therapists, counselors, educators, healthcare providers, parents, really open to anybody who wants to learn more about yoga and mindfulness for kids. In the training, they're going to go into therapeutic practices for children with autism, ADHD, sensory processing, CP, movement disorders, and other special needs. You can register for this training on the Yoga Joy North website, which I'll link to in the show notes. So I like to ask all my guests this, but I would love to know what yoga means to both of you. So, Mary, do you want to start?
Sure.
Okay.
I think to me, yoga means having the ability to control my inner emotions and find a place of peace, because I tend to run on the anxious side. So it gives me, like you've mentioned in the past, the tools to help me find some calmness, find some stillness. And it also, I see it as a way for me to age with grace, that I can continue to move, continue to find enjoyment in movement, continue to be strong for as long as as I can be. And so just the combining of the physical with the spiritual and the mental piece is what's really important to me.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Brenda?
All right. Well, for me, I think yoga is truly about connection for me. So it's both my connection with myself and it's my connection with everyone in my world. So just taking that both in my physical self and in my mental, emotional self, and just using my yoga to strengthen those connections and always remember that they're there. So I am connecting to that true self that's always there, my true being. I did bring out one little poem that I think I'll read at this point, because I always say it at the end of my sessions with my children, and I say it to myself also, but I think it says a lot. And I was taught it through Sonia Sumar, and it goes like this. It's, I am peace, I am love, I am joy, I am light. I have a beautiful light inside my heart that was given to me when I was born. And because of that light, I am not afraid of anybody or anything. Namaste. So to me, that's really what yoga, it's what yoga is about. And if I can share that with anybody or everybody, I just think that that's quite a gift.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you to both of you for sharing it with me and for being my teachers. I really am thankful for the two of you and for holding space for that veil to kind of be lifted of making yoga accessible for everybody. And this conversation has sort of transcended my thought even more about what that means. And because I kind of was stuck on the idea of having it be like a physical or a mental inclusivity. But no, this is for like all demographics, all communities, all walks of life. It's not just focused on bringing it just to people who have, a physical or emotional thing going on. This is to bring it to groups of people who might not receive yoga.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Beautiful summary.
Thank you so much. You really just popped my mind open, ladies. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the format that I tried out for this episode. I'd like to thank everyone who has supported the show, everybody who has shared the podcast with their friends, followed the podcast on social media, everybody who has left the podcast a review or a rating. Without all of you, I wouldn't be able to do this. Sending all of you peace and love and light. Now let's sign off with the beautiful sounds of Rob and Melissa, who will be on the podcast next week. Shanti peace. Shri Guru Charana Saroja Raja Nijamana Mukuru